Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Views on Vue. I am Steve Edwards, the host with the face for radio and the voice for being a mime, but I'm still your host. I'm flying solo on the panel today, and with me, my special guest coming all the way from Nigeria is Uche Azubuko. Did I get that right?
You did, Edward, you did. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Very good. Oh, you're welcome. So where I'm at, it is about 30 degrees and snowing like crazy here in the town and up on the mountain, which is great for us skiers. How's it where you at? Pretty warm?
Well, it's nice over here. It's about 8 p.m. here.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm assuming you're not getting much snow in Nigeria?
No snow at all. Where I am,
no
at
snow
least.
at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, Uche is a Vue enthusiast and uses it both for work and as part of outside of work. So I'm going to let him give his background. So why don't you tell us who you are, tell us about your development background, and how you use Vue at work and outside of work.
All right. So I am a software engineer at OneLiquidity. So I'm part of the awesome team at OneLiquidity that is building a single solution stack for businesses to access liquidity, technology, and licensing covers so that their founders can focus on innovation, scalability, and customer acquisition. Along with that, I am a co-organizer at Vue.js Nigeria. So monthly, we hold sessions wherein various Vue enthusiasts around the country come along to share their experiences, and we leave with lessons learned. Along with that, I am passionate about teaching, and for that, I'm a STEM educator. Right? I'm also passionate about advocacy for women in tech, SDG4 goals, SDG5 goals, and with that, I'm the founder of Thrivescape. So Thrivescape is a community that I started last year, wherein I provide an enabling environment for the girl child to embrace the superpowers of being builders and creators by introducing them to programming skills and things around tech.
So her Thrivescape is basically just to help women get involved in Vue development?
Yeah, essentially the girl child, yeah. No,
okay,
not
so
just Vue development though. But things around tech, so front-end development, back-end development, DSAs, product designing. For now, there's full-fledged involvement regarding things on the front-end development, since that's where I personally also focus on.
Okay, so what other front-end tools do you work with, or do you plan to work with? Let's put it that way.
Well, I have worked with Flutter. Even before I started working with Vue, I used to work with Flutter, which I still currently do, right? Also, I work with React. The difference between working with React and Vue for me is that for React, I do it more when I am involved with personal projects, or I have to get involved with some technical writing or the other, right? I also, use React for those. So, but then essentially in building, I do more of Vue stuff. Some front-end tools I intend to use going forward. I would say I would like to have a look at Angular. It's a front-end tool I haven't tried out, right? And then I also feel like trying out React Native wouldn't hurt, since I have good knowledge of JavaScript and all that, encompasses in JavaScript ecosystem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Around here, React is a dirty word. No, I'm not kidding. But what about backend? What kind of backend tools do you focus on?
Well, for backend, I have dabbled into Node, GraphQL. Also, using headless CMS, because, as an FE, as someone who majors in front-end development, I do more with working with headless CMS when working on personal projects, right? Not just working on a team. So I've also dabbled in databases like Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, right? So these are a few backend related tools and technologies that I have been involved with.
Right. So
Also,
Node.js, have you any other languages like PHP or Rust or Go or anything like that?
uh, there's little knowledge of PHP from my end, but Rust isn't a language I have worked with. Go isn't a language I have worked with. I actually intend to use Go sometime in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the two back-end languages I hear more about than anything else are Rust and Go. It seems like just in terms of, tooling and making other tools, not necessarily as for a web project, right, but just for server-side tooling. They seem to be pretty quick, for sure. All right, so let's talk about Vue. So at OneLiquidity, you said you're using Vue. That's as your main front-end tool. Is that correct?
Yeah, we use Vue.
So what version of Vue are you on?
Vue 3. Vue 3.
You are using Vue 3. So did you have to do a migration from Vue 2 to Vue 3?
So at OneLiquidity, from the ground up, we chose to use Vue 3 already.
Okay.
So no need
Okay,
for
so
migration.
you must be fairly
here.
recent then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Vue 3 from the beginning. Yeah. Certainly, I've been working with Vue 3 myself on a project, and it's got some differences from Vue 2, that's for sure. There's some pain points. There's some pros and cons. Some things just take a little getting used to. Yeah, I know one of the nice things with Vue 3 is that out of the box, it supports TypeScript, where if in Vue 2, if you wanted to use TypeScript, it was sort of painful. You sort of had to add it on and do things a certain way. I tried a little bit and said, no, I don't think so. Although I have to admit, I'm not really a full-time TypeScript devotee myself. I know I need to get there for sure, but haven't really embraced the TypeScript yet. So that'll transition us into your post. I know that you had a blog post that you wrote on your Medium page about how to use TypeScript with Vue.js, your go-to guide. So why don't you tell us about the benefits of TypeScript, just as a general rule before we get into how it's used in Vue.
Okay. So essentially, we need to come to know that TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, right? Also, there is the need to know that JavaScript on its own is a dynamically typed language, right? But with TypeScript, you are able to declare specific types on a variable. So for me, I would say that JavaScript, or rather TypeScript, is basically JavaScript that empowers scalability. In my own words, that's how I'll put it. And it can be a very beautiful union when you use TypeScript in building complex Vue applications. So I would also say that for someone who has worked with Dart, or who currently even works with Dart when working with Flutter, and for anyone out there who uses Java or C++, you would find that that nature of static type checking is also involved in those languages, and that's what TypeScript does and excels in.
Right. So I guess the way I would put it, from a non-user's standpoint, is that it checks, and it's only checking when you're writing your code, right? It's not something that's running in your production code, right? So let's say, for instance, you're passing in a prop to a component, and it's supposed to be a string, but for some reason you pass in a number. You try to pass in a number or a Boolean or an array or an object or something else. The point of TypeScript is you will already have said, okay, this needs to be a string. And then when your code tries to pass it in, it warns you, right? It gives you an alert and says, hey, no, you can't do this. It gives you the famous red squiggly line.
Yeah.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you can also, we've incorporated a little bit into my work projects as well, where we'll have separate TypeScript files, we'll call them. And you can have, it doesn't have to be just, this variable is a string and this variable is an array. You can have all kinds of complex types, right? You can have if I'm calling this function, I need an array, this to be a string, this to be a number, and I need to have this properties, and you can get very, very strict with it. So the whole idea, obviously, is that you're not passing in invalid data that's going to cause errors when you actually try to run your app, in production or in your browser. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. TypeScript does well to give a specific shape to a variable. You're right.
Yeah, PHP is pretty similar to JavaScript in that it can be very loosey-goosey. You can declare a variable, you can be a string, and then all of a sudden you can make it an array, or you can make it, a number, unless you've done some specific declarations and declarations, whether it's in doc blocks or various ways. So PHP, I know, is moving that way as well, just because of the messes that you can create. Flexibility is good as long as you use it right?
Cool.
So let's talk about your blog post here, and where are the various places within a Vue 3 project that you would use TypeScript?
So for me, essentially in all places that pertain to variable declaration. So while I'm using my props, while I'm passing props, while I'm defining emits, while I am defining a function, while I am defining a template ref, while I am defining provide and injects, right? I don't essentially use those when working. I mean, for the most part of it, right? But those can also be used, right? TypeScript can also be used on provide and inject. Also, for computed properties as well, you can use TypeScript too.
I'm looking at your blog post here, and so, for instance, a reactive. You use a ref or reactive, and those are both tools to make a variable reactive, so that if you change it in one place, it's going to be changed in another place, which is what you want, right? So if you change the data in a field, then it's going to change your display value somewhere on the component, or even elsewhere in your app, right? So you could just define an interface, or what would you call it? A type for this field that says, okay, this is a string. This is a complex thing. Because I know with ref and reactive, you can have all kinds of levels of data values. You could have a whole object with 3 levels to it, and all that stuff that you could define in TypeScript, right?
The decision to use TypeScript comes from a place of say you have a large team of developers, right, working on a project, and you need some sense of increased development time, or rather development speed on the job, right? You also want to encourage maintainable codes. Say you also want to ensure some sense of documentation while writing code, then TypeScript does well to play a huge part in such, because say I am not using TypeScript, for example, on a project, and I just define a variable, say const name is equals to Uche, for example, right? Or const completed is equals to true, for example. Let's use that. A developer elsewhere who might be jumping on the project might not know what I was trying to do right at the time. So he might then think that, he could also say he could also rather use computed somewhere and completed somewhere and say a string like yes, right, or no. But the use of TypeScript is in such a way that it gives our project some sense of shape, so that all the developers working on a project can know how to define a variable while working with variables. So it's very useful even in cases when working on open source projects, large teams, taking care of errors ahead of building and things like that. So TypeScript really does well in helping cases like that.
Right. So in other words, the idea is that you don't have to explain something to a new developer that might come on the team because ideally they could look at your TypeScript definitions, right, and know, okay, this is what is expected here and this is what expected here. And there's also the errors that TypeScript's going to give them anyway, right? That's usually a pretty good indication that you're doing something wrong.
That's right.
So now I know that Vue itself, if I remember correctly, Vue 3 is written in TypeScript, the underlying, the library that we're using. And so when you spin up a Vue 3 project, brand new, and I'm using, working on one with Inertia.js at the moment, but you don't really have to do a lot of configuration or setup, right? Because it's built in through the base projects, through whether you're using the CLI or whatever tool you're using to spin up your project. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, that's right. So essentially, Vue 3 was written with TypeScript, right, from the onset. So you could already just add TypeScript while you are bootstrapping a Vue project, while you're scaffolding a Vue project already. There's an option to add it, and you could either choose yes or no, right? So choosing yes would have you including TypeScript in your project so easily and seamlessly, unlike when it was in Vue 3.
Right. And so out of the box, other than defining your different TypeScript definitions and interfaces and whatever tool you're using within your code, is there any external configuration you need to make before you actually start coding in TypeScript in your Vue 3 project itself?
So I would say no, because already choosing to use TypeScript, right, from the point of scaffolding, from the point of Vue init or Vue create, Vue does the job for you. It sets all your scripts to a lang of TS, and you could choose to use setup or define components. But defining lang of TS on your script tags already just does the job for you of adding TypeScript to the script portion of your SFC file while coding. So there is no complications elsewhere. There's no complication even while on the job, unlike how it was tedious in Vue 3, in Vue 2, where you had to always use the Vue.extend method, or you have to use Vue class components, or things like that were very tedious and stressful.
Okay. Yeah, I know that. And now the IDEs themselves that people use also have a lot of TypeScript capabilities built in. I use PHP Storm, which is a version of WebStorm. Myself, the other big one is Visual Studio Code. Right, yeah. That's the one you hear, the dominant one. I know they have a lot of TypeScript support built in, and it's nice when you're typing along and you come upon your method that has definitions, and it just pops up with hints and telling you what's required and that kind of stuff, for sure. Definitely pretty useful.
Yeah,
pretty useful. Are there any, when you're working with Vue 3 and TypeScript, are there any Vue specific things that you have to be aware of when using TypeScript, say that you wouldn't run into in React or any other TypeScript implementation?
So I would say that for any case where you need to be aware of anything while working with Vue, just as you mentioned, IDEs, because of course that's where we all write our codes. As a Vue developer, it's essential for you to use the Vola plugin, right? So it really helps to provide IntelliSense around TypeScript and the use of TypeScript in your Vue projects. So if at all you may come across any problems, that is in the case that you have set up your Vue project with TypeScript from the scratch, Vola would do well to address and point it out for you as a problem. If also you are trying to pass values that aren't defined in probably your types or your interfaces, Vola would do well to provide squiggly lines for you, all right? The Visual Studio Code also has done well to have TypeScript support, right? So it also does well to provide the squiggly lines for you where you are running into an error here or there. Yeah. So, but essentially, just using just scaffolding with Vue from the ground up would do the job for you for a seamless flow of things. And then also for those who probably haven't had to scaffold from the ground up and probably want to use TypeScript incrementally in their Vue projects, they can just go the route of Vue add TypeScript, and that does the job for them automatically. They really don't have to configure things. It just takes care of it. Why? Because Vue essentially was already built with TypeScript, so all the nitty-gritties are taken care of from the ground up.
I know I'm going to have to take the plunge and learn TypeScript full time here at some point. I just haven't had time to do it. Cool. So is there anything else TypeScript specific in Vue that we haven't covered that would be worth talking about?
I would say that in as much as TypeScript has great positives, right? I feel like just cause everyone is on the TypeScript wagon doesn't mean that you just jump in to use TypeScript without thinking about your own context, right? So say you have a tight deadline and you haven't used TypeScript before, it wouldn't be wise per se to use TypeScript on your project because it has some kind of steep learning curve, right? And say you have various developers working on your project and perhaps they haven't used TypeScript before. This means that all your developers would have to learn TypeScript in itself. And then remember, you have a tight deadline. So it might not be wise in itself, right, to go the TypeScript way in that kind of context. What might be much more helpful would be getting involved with more of unit testing, right? That would be much more helpful for a context like that. But say you are working with data-heavy projects, then essentially it would be very helpful that TypeScript is your go-to because you don't want to lose the structure of data across the project, right? Because that might be disastrous moving forward, even for you and for anybody who comes in on the project.
Yeah, okay, but let's assume that you don't have those time constraints, right? You've got all the time in the world. You don't have an urgency. In that case, there's really, can you see any reason it wouldn't be good to implement TypeScript in a Vue project?
Good question. So the question essentially is that you have all the time in the world, right? But
Right.
still, what context could it be not helpful to use TypeScript, right?
Right.
I would say if you aren't working on a data-heavy project, if you're working on a minor project, a very small pet project, a personal project, you probably want to scaffold something for a technical writing that you're currently doing. I would say, except it's tailored for TypeScript in itself, I would say that there might not be a need to add it to the project. Because remember, we were all using Vue 2 without TypeScript, and we were doing well. We were building great projects without TypeScript. So if it's a small project, I would say that one can pass without the need for TypeScript in it. It's a very small project. But a big one, a complex project, Vue TypeScript would be a beautiful union, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I've heard a number of people in the tech world, some more prominent than others, and I can remember listening to them, say a year or two ago. There's one particular one that comes to mind that, well, yeah, TypeScript's okay. As long as I put defaults and type requirements on my props when I pass them in, I don't really need it. Yeah, I've got other tools, and fast forward a year or two, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I use TypeScript on everything. I can't imagine programming without it." So it's been interesting. And I was listening to another podcast this morning, and one of the things they mentioned is in the most recent State of JS survey. That came out in regards to TypeScript. Among those who had actually responded to the survey, the use of TypeScript was just huge. It was, most people either they know about it, they like it, they use it, they use it as much as they can. And I was looking for the data here real quick, and I'm not finding the particular page, but it's just huge how much TypeScript has grown. So, and I don't think we're saying anything new. You'll hear the same perspective around in many other places talking about front-end development, for sure. So, all right, well, if that's it, unless there's anything else you can think of to talk, we'll move on to picks. Did we cover everything TypeScript and Vue?
Yeah, I feel like we did. Did.
All right, so let's move on to picks. Picks are the part of the show where we get to talk about other things that maybe are not related to tech. It can be, we've had books, games, food, movies, tools. So anyway, I'll go first.
Okay.
And before I get to my usual dad jokes that are the high point of any of my podcasts, talk about a book/movie. So my son is 11, and for years we've read every night. I read to him. I've gone through some classics: Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, the Bible. And one of the books that we read recently was sort of interesting. I was down at my parents' house visiting them, and I forgot to bring the book that we were reading. So I went to my parents' library or bookshelf and found a book that I hadn't read for years, and it's called The Hiding Place. And The Hiding Place is a true story, and it was written by a lady named Corrie ten Boom. And the background is that she was living with her family in Harlem up when World War II started. And the Nazis came in I think it was 1940, and invaded Holland and took it over in about 5 days. And they started coming after the Jews and basically carting them off or taking away their homes, their businesses, eventually carting them off to concentration camps. And so through her brother, Corrie lived in a small house in Harlem with her older sister and her father, and they were watchmakers. They owned a watch shop. And they became part of the Dutch underground and hid Jews from the Nazis. They built a custom little. First, they would house them in their house called the Beje, and they built a secret room so that when the Nazis came hunting, they could all get away in this secret room. Well, eventually, a Dutch informer turned them into the Nazis for being part of the underground, and their whole family was taken off. And Corrie and her sister were deported, taken initially to a prison, a Dutch prison there that was taken over for political prisoners, and then eventually taken to a concentration camp in Germany called Ravensbrück. And the book, and she came out alive. Her sister died while she was in the concentration camp, probably a month before Corrie was released. And it turns out that when Corrie was released I think it was December 30th of 1944, not too long before the war ended, it was a clerical mistake on the Germans' part. But she was released, and then she ended up telling her story, which came to the book, and then the movie was made in 1975. But she went around the world speaking and talking about what had happened to her and so on for years until she died in 1980, somewhere in her late 80s. But it's a very fascinating history of what was happening in the concentration camps and in Holland during World War II, and just the redemption and a lot of great things that came out of it, as horrible as it was, a lot of the great things that came out of that camp. But anyway, that's my recommendation for a book and a movie. The movie's pretty good. It's about 2.5 hours long, and there's no way it can cover all the details that are in the movie. But yeah, it's still a great story. So on to the dad jokes, and then we will get on to Uche's picks. So I was not recently, because I've had my job for a while. In the past, I had a job as a taxi driver, and I got fired because it turns out that people don't always appreciate it when you go the extra mile. I have a lot of childhood memories, And one of my favorite childhood memories was building sandcastles with my grandfather. But then my mother took the urn away. Because I was playing with his ashes, right? Right. And then finally, one of my favorite lines is that when I die, when I'm going to have a closed casket funeral, right? So casket's up in front. But halfway through the ceremony, I want the organist to start playing Pop Goes the Weasel over and over and over until people are freaking out. Is he really going to come out, right? So at the same ceremony, what I want them to do is I want them to take the bouquet off the casket and throw it into the crowd to see who's next. Right? Freak people out. So anyway, those are my picks and jokes for the week. So Uche, what do you have for us for picks?
Your picks are funny. Your dad jokes are funny because I love that joke. Yeah, I love dark humor. So I found them so quite funny. Well, my first pick would be talking about Hot5scape, right? I feel like I could share insight to it because it would be nice to get contributors for the project, right? So I have a link for my Buy Me a Coffee aimed at enabling this for the girl child through tech, essentially in a place like Nigeria. So the girl child here in Nigeria isn't seen to be someone who is involved in tech, right? Even when she goes to school, you would find that in the university, for example, here, the ratio of the girl child to the boy child in class that is tech related, say computer science class, is very little. I would say there might be a girl child to maybe 20 guys, right, studying computer science in school here. So for the sake of providing computer equipment, materials, workshop sessions to do more, because, I'm currently doing, right, but there is a need for more, right? I have also attached my Buy Me a Coffee link, right, to help do more. So that's regarding Hot5scape. I would move on to movies, right? So I saw this movie early today, and I'm like, nah, I have to tell Steve about this. So it's it's actually a series, right, that started on Amazon Prime, right? And the name is Fartsy. Fartsy. I haven't watched it yet, but I saw that it started this month, February, I think it was 10 or 19, right? Just a week ago. Fartsy, Farzi. Farzi.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I guess that's something you could check out, Steve. If you were a fan of Money Heist, you might be a fan of Fartsy.
Fartsy, do you know what's it about in general?
So I don't know much about it, but seeing the trailer and watching the little things that were written of it, it seems like it's on the lines of Money Heist, and I found Money Heist very interesting. So I just feel like it's something I might be interested in, and I'm just telling everyone who's listening to this to just check it out, and you might just find it worthy.
Yeah, it looks like that's the fakes is the English word in Farsi as a translation. Not sure what language. I'm looking at the page on Amazon right now, but I'll drop a link into the show notes so then people can check it out themselves.
Cool.
That, and you said Money Heist was the other one?
No. For anyone who was a fan of Money Heist, then they might enjoy Fartsy.
Right, Money Heist. Okay. Yeah, okay. We'll put some links in the show notes so that people can check those out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming to us all the way from Nigeria. We, like I always like to say, we are a truly multinational podcast here at Views on Vue. And talking about TypeScript, if people want to follow you, whether it's on Twitter or social media or give you money, where's the best ways to do that?
For me, on almost every social platform, I am Uche Azubuko. So on Twitter, I am Uche Azubuko. On LinkedIn, I am Uche Azubuko. On GitHub, I am Uche Azubuko. You can also find me at Uche Azubuko. If you search it, you would find me on Instagram. So virtually on every platform. Buy me a coffee, Uche Azubuko. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. We will put all those links in the show notes for those who wish to follow you and to give you money for her Thrivescape. I'm going to guess you could use people too, not just money, but people to help you out.
Oh, yes, essentially. Essentially, I am also looking for volunteers who would join me on this great project to help
Yeah, I know
Nigeria
there's
and
been
their
other
child.
groups. There used to be one called Vue Vixens that I remember I haven't heard from in a while. But I know there are other groups that are similar that, want to help women get into tech just because there aren't as many of them as maybe there should be, for sure. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you for coming on, Uche. Great to talk to you. And we will talk at y'all next time on Views on Vue.